Welcome to the Home Group Podcast, where we discuss everything addiction, recovery, mental health. I am Flip.
And I am Luke. Our generation of men, you're not allowed to have feelings.
We're going to talk about things that are uncomfortable, things that are scary, because when you talk about it, you take away its power.
The only thing that's going to keep me clean is me not wanting to be who I was then.
We was in the trenches, now look how we out here ballin'. Popped up in the max, now we flooring in the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Home Group Podcast. I am Flip, clean date April Fools, 2016.
No.
Nail clippers.
Not the clips.
Yep.
And I am Luke, clean date October 11th, 2017. Oh, nothing but net, baby.
Episode
Let's go.
22.
22. Episode 22.
Super excited about this. We have some special guests. This has been in the works for a while. Super excited about this. We have the girls from Surprisingly Sober.
I'm Ariel. I've been sober since May 2nd, 2021, and I manage Surprisingly Sober with Cass.
Hi, I'm Cassie. I don't know my sobriety date, so we're just going to make something up here.
Okay.
March 2021 is the month, so I know that at least.
Perfect.
And then I co-manage Surprisingly Sober with Ariel.
So, Surprisingly Sober, you guys have had kind of this social media presence. How long ago did that get started?
So Cassie and I have a pretty funny story. When I got sober, I started an account. And we just kind of started like DMing each other and talking about sobriety. I was like fresh, like early, like days counting. And Cassie and I just got together and talked about sobriety all day long and started this account together. So literally we've started ever since I've been sober. So we've checked in along the way and just update the page, and it keeps us connected.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you guys...
Accountability partners.
You need it. You need
100%.
accountability. When you guys started this, was there... I mean, obviously, you guys were just kind of enjoying the journey. Was there kind of a goal in mind? Did you eventually want to do podcasts? Was it just going to be social media? What did that look like?
I think we eventually had plans to start a podcast, but we didn't really know what the timeline looked like on that. So we just kind of took it slow. I mean, we only just started our podcast. We're on episode 2. We had plans, but it's taken us a little while to circle back to them. But we're super excited.
Well, I think too, like we all just wanted to see like what happened in our sobriety. Like we individually have like this path that we're going on. And when it blends in together, like we enjoy that process and that time together. But then we also really prioritize our time to like work our journeys. So when we get to do new exciting projects, like it's definitely like something that we love to do.
That's awesome. Keep them busy.
Absolutely.
You gotta keep busy.
That's super exciting. So you guys have 2 episodes that are out now. What do you think of the podcast journey so far? Has it been difficult? Has it been fun? Has it been exciting? What are you guys thinking?
It's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. Like, I love that we have this like time to get together. And like, I'm, really involved with like my sobriety community and like meetings and the program that I work. So this is just like an outside little thing that I love to do to like stay connected to people that have all sorts of different journeys within their sobriety. And like, I can just share how it worked for me. And I think that was like the most exciting part, was just to like share how this has all been for me. Cause I too, like I've been new and I never thought that I would be able to stack up the days that I have. So to then like have that message to somebody else, it's just been really cool.
I think it's really cool too that we have such different approaches to sobriety.
Yeah.
And we have such a different path. But then when we do come together, we're able to share, how both of our journeys have worked. And I think that helps probably more people, or hopefully it does anyway. Because my approach is just like a little bit different in some ways than yours is. But just sharing what works for us, I think has been like so awesome to do.
Yeah, that's crazy starting that account up right at your beginning, because it's like a reflection of your whole process and like your whole journey, right?
Yeah,
So
we have posts on there from like celebrating our 30 days. And so
great.
That's
Yeah.
wild. That is
Yeah,
like
and there's-
a virtual journal.
Yeah.
no, it is. There's been some
Yeah.
points where Cassie and I haven't talked for like 6 months, and we've gotten back onto the page and we're like, hey, are you still sober? Yeah. Are you still sober? Yeah, I am. Oh, okay. Like happy
Nice.
1 year. And like we go through seasons of it. But now since I logged back in and like really like gotten into the podcast and like creating reels and like just really like digging in, like we're on it every day. But yeah, there's been like seasons of it where like, you good? You're like, yeah, I am.
Well, I think that speaks to recovery in general, right?
Yeah.
Like there are times when, for me, I'm extremely passionate about it. I'm all in. And then there's times where actually your dad, Cass, taught me in certain seasons, just hunker down. And it's just about trying to survive. It's not about trying to necessarily grow or, take on any new sponsees or do any, step work. It's just sometimes there's those seasons in life where it's just about staying clean.
Yeah. And I couldn't imagine like trying to manage a social media profile
God.
with 30 days clean. I mean, that in itself is a feat. For the first like 6 months of me being clean, I was white knuckling it, just trying to hold it together.
Yeah.
So that's really dope.
Yeah, super cool that you can look back on that. So I know that we had kind of a Zoom call, right? To kind of discuss some things that we wanted to talk about.
We did.
Yeah, you remember you showed up late? You showed up like 5 minutes before it ended, that one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you showed up and threw a couple zingers.
What
Then
are you
you
talking
left.
about, dude?
So something that we wanted to talk about is there are a lot of, in my opinion, misconceptions between alcoholics and drug addicts, right? And even though there's programs that say alcohol is a drug, I know, like, and this is just me speaking personally, I have an aunt who is an alcoholic who says, I'm nothing like you people. There's just that kind of stigma and that misconception. And in talking, again, I go to meetings for drug addicts, but I also go to meetings specifically for people with alcohol addictions, right? And to me, if it's a good meeting, it's a good meeting. I don't care what the title of it is. And I just really believe that there are more similarities than differences. And so just kind of wanted to touch on your guys' journey a little bit. I know Luke's got some questions. I got some questions. If you guys have questions, whatever works for everybody. So Luke, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say that I applaud the recovering alcoholic, because I know that if I could walk into any gas station in the United States and buy a bag of heroin or buy some pills, that I don't think there's a way that I would be able to stay clean. So, hats off to anybody that is in, a recovering alcoholic. How did you know that you were an alcoholic, and what does a bottom look like for an alcoholic?
So for me, alcohol is my drug of choice. Alcohol and I have a long history, but for me, it was really difficult to identify that alcohol was the chief suspect in my life, because my pain started prior to drinking alcohol and alcohol being my solution. So to me, I always thought like, no, it's me. Like I'm the one with the problem. I have to fix me. And alcohol is just like in the mix of the craziness of my life. Like it's just, in there with burning bridges and getting in arguments with family. And it's just another kind of thing that's tangled up. But once I finally identified that when things that go wrong happen in my life have alcohol around them, and I removed the alcohol, everything in my life got better and all my potentials went up. But for me, my rock bottom, my last drink was at one of my best friend's bachelorette parties. And it had kind of been like the last 6 months of my drinking had gotten really unmanageable, and like to a level that like I hadn't like experienced before. And I think a part of that was because, I had a pretty big job, before the pandemic, and it kind of propped me up to show up to life. It kind of kept me from drinking the way that I wanted to drink, because I really had to like suit up and show up. And so I did that as much as I could. But when that kind of ended in the pandemic and I had to kind of figure it out, I was able to drink how I wanted to drink. And I really saw the woman I was, and it was really like a slave for alcohol. And I planned my, my days around it and my weeks around it. And so my bottom just happened because I had nothing there anymore to prop up my life. My life just revolved around alcohol. and it started to like bleed out. My biggest fear when I was drinking was that I was going to be exposed. You know, like I wanted to look so put together and like make it look all right. But it was just, it bled out like in a fury. And it was like trying to scramble it back up where no one could notice. And my friends wouldn't catch what like wind of it. But it became so public and so terrible after that bachelorette. It was like, okay, what are you going to do about it? You know, and I think that was the question that got me sober. Like, what am I willing to do? And for me, it was to go to a meeting and try to do something different. And I had a therapist at the time that said, okay, this seems to no longer be working. And like, maybe you need to try to go get help. And I asked my partner at the time, you know, what do you think about me going to like a meeting? And I thought if someone of his caliber says it's okay, then I can go. Like the outside world will accept it if this person accepts it. And he was like, yeah, I think you should do it. And I haven't stopped going ever since, you know, and it's really that like notion of like when you're washed ashore, just stick your hand out and someone's going to pull you up. And that was really my experience.
Wow. Wow. That's not very different from any, and yeah,
No.
that's deep.
As a matter of fact, right, in my kind of history and my story, I always hit rock bottom when I would get arrested. That would be my rock bottom. And I could never get clean time after that, right? Because unlike you, I was not the problem. The drugs were the problem. And it wasn't until my last stint in rehab where I didn't go to jail. I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose everything that I had, but I hit that I was emotionally bankrupt. And that's what it took for me to kind of step back, look at the man in the mirror and say, okay, no, you're the problem. The drugs and alcohol, that's just a symptom to the problem. And so I think that a lot of people can relate with that. Cass, what about you? What did your bottom look like?
My bottom, kind of like Ariel's, how it got progressively worse towards the end. I didn't lose all the things. I didn't, you know, fortunately, I didn't go to jail or rehab. I had my dad in my ear for years. You have a problem, go to a meeting with me. My dad's big in AA. But I didn't want to accept that I had a problem. And I think part of it was the addiction, maybe telling me. It was really twisted. I didn't think that I was an alcoholic because I hadn't had the severe consequences. I had my condo. I still had my job in management. I was raising my daughter, not super effectively, but everyone was alive. So I just didn't, I think it was part of my addiction just telling me like, you're fine. You don't have a problem. Just keep going. But towards the end, I was doing some crazy things. Like I crashed my car, leaving a bar downtown Sarasota into another moving car. And nothing happened consequence wise, but things like that would start to happen, or I would wake up, my phone wouldn't have been on the charger. I'd be late to work by 3 hours. Lying, making up excuses, you know, you become a liar. So I was doing a lot of that. But it just got really sad and I was really tired at the end. I was just so tired, like emotionally, I'd had enough. I didn't like who I was. And I just had to face that like everyone around me was actually right. And I hate to say this, but my dad was right. I totally had a problem. I am an alcoholic.
I'm gonna have to clip
cannot
that
drink.
and send it to him, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He'll love that. But one other thing too, I have a lot of addiction in my family aside from my dad, and I've seen a lot of people die from drugs and alcohol who are close relatives and friends. And my grandmother passed away. She was a drug addict when I was in 6th grade. So my mom had a really hard life growing up with her. But my mom towards the end told me too, I'm just really sad. You're turning into my mother and I just want you to get help. And I think that comment, you know, with all the other things that were happening and just being sad and tired and finally accepting that I had the problem, like that comment really, it really just, it changed my mind about the whole thing, and I was able to accept it. And the beginning of becoming sober was really difficult for me because I had only hung out with friends that were drinking nonstop, coworkers and friends outside of work. I had to just stay in my house and I didn't do anything for like 3 months. Like I would go to bed, go to work, spend time with my daughter when I had her. And I was really depressed and I didn't know how to handle it because I didn't take the traditional meeting route. I'm not sure why I didn't do that, but I would go to meetings here and there, but I never was fully invested in a program. So the beginning was really difficult for me. But yeah, that's how my rock bottom was.
That's really similar to my story. Is, I didn't have a sponsor or anything like that for 5 years until my brother
Mhm.
went back out, and then that kind of like opened my eyes up to where I could be if I didn't take it seriously. So I decided to, dive headfirst into the program. But it's crazy how like the universe will start to throw little things at you when you're not doing the right thing, like crashing the car and just little things like you said, waking up late, missing your alarm clock. It'll try to throw these little things at you to try to open up your eyes. People say it's your higher power doing for you what you can't do for yourself. Because I had a lot of that. I fell asleep at the wheel a few times, um, and then ended up going to prison for a while. So that was like the cake. That was the start of it right there.
That comment that your mom made, I lost my grandma to alcoholism. She was 53, 55, somewhere in there. I was young. I was in like 7th grade. And my grandma and grandpa had raised me for a couple years when my mom and my dad split and we kind of moved with them. And I never noticed, right? Because she was a functioning alcoholic. She would get up, she would go to work, she would come home, she would, cook dinner, do all of those things. And I just thought she always just had one drink because she just always had that just one drink in her hand. I had no idea that it was getting refilled 6 or 7 or 8 times, and towards the end, her life was just so unmanageable. And unfortunately, the time she made the decision to get sober, it was too late. She was just so far gone at that point that, unfortunately, she passed away. But I remember my mom saying a similar thing, like, you're headed down that path. And it was one of those soul shaking, comments, and something that I didn't want to believe. And I fought tooth and nail, until I was truly ready. And unfortunately, we all know people that struggle with addiction and alcoholism and kind of all of those things. And we just want to shake them, right? And show them that this side of the street is nice, and it's fun, and you can have a life that is beyond your wildest dreams without those substances. But unfortunately, we can't. It just comes down to that willingness,
Yeah.
And so it's just super interesting. Let me ask you guys, for you in your journeys, what did forgiving yourself look like? Was that an easy process? Was that something that you've done? Is it something that you're in the process of doing? Because I know for me, forgiving myself, that grandma that I told you about, I didn't go to her funeral. My other grandma had passed away, and I didn't go to her funeral because I wasn't going to have enough drugs to last me the trip. And so there's a lot of forgiving that I had to do with myself. I mean, do you guys have experience with that?
So that's something that I'm really struggling with.
Mm.
I'll be honest. This is an honest podcast, right?
Absolutely.
100%.
So I've been actually talking about that over the last couple weeks. And I think that's the hardest part for me of the whole journey is figuring out how to fully forgive myself. I keep just telling myself, like, if I keep doing the next right thing, I'm not drinking, I'm, just trying to live a better life and become a way better version of the person I was when I was in active addiction. I was a monster, and my dad will tell you, but I was terrible. And like you were just saying, I wish I could go back and shake myself, because you can't get sober until you decide that you want to get sober. My parents, my friends, my siblings, people would tell me all the time, and you can't do it until you're ready. But I'm having a really difficult time fully forgiving myself just because of all the crazy, terrible, terrible things that I did. I'm working on it. So it's a work in progress over here, but praying and being now back involved in like with faith and God and everything like is helping me a lot, but I still have a long way to go. So,
And let me ask you a question on that. And you don't have to get specific, but for instance, I know like with me, there's certain amends that I had to make, right? And part of the difficult process was making some of those amends and them not being received. Right. And so there's people that I reached out to that I apologized to that didn't care what I had to say. Right. And so then what do you do with that? Right. Because how can I make it up to a person that doesn't want me to make it up to them? Right. And so what I had to learn to do is to do the next right thing and to continue to walk this journey and to help people that are struggling and to be an ear to my friends when they're going through things and just trying to be a better human being than I was the day before. Right. And so I know amends is a big thing. I know Luke struggles with, because he's struggling with forgiving himself.
Yeah, like here's the thing. I can't go back and and like care about my kids more than I cared about my drug addiction and cared about my drug of choice. Like I can't go back and unrob those houses that I robbed. You know what I mean? Like it's something that like today I've been able to work this program and get my kids back in my life. And today I just try to show up for my kids now, because for me, as far as like a kid's concerned, they're not really worried about the time that you're not spending with them, just the time that you are, spending with them. That's all I can remember with my dad. I'm not really thinking about all that time that I didn't spend with him. So it's just like Flip was saying, that living amends today, just doing the right thing today, the next best thing, putting the right foot in front of the other and getting through it that way. That's how I work my living amends.
So are you struggling with because us addicts, right, love that instant gratification, right? And so doing the next right thing, it isn't instantly gratifying, right?
It's a marathon.
Showing up to work on time, you don't get a pat on the back for that, answering the phone when your friends call, they don't say, hey, thank you so much for answering the phone, and doing those types of things. And so is that something that you're struggling with? Like, what is it about the forgiving yourself? Is there like a particular area that you're struggling with?
I am having a hard time because of the sober page that we have. Just creating reels lately and having pictures and videos of myself in active addiction, and watching and looking at some of those things brings me back right, to that night or to those nights. And I just feel so much shame around the things that I've done. Just overall, nothing specifically. I don't know, how deep are we wanting to share here?
No, I mean, listen, this isn't just, we don't have to dive into it. I was just curious. Our intro has all like the cool stuff we're doing in recovery. And the last image you see is mugshots of me and him. And so every time I'm editing and my daughter loves the intro because she was in the NICU and she likes seeing her. I don't know why she likes seeing herself in the NICU, but she's like, oh, let me see. I want to see myself. Right. And I see that that's the last image that pops up. And every time it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, it's a mugshot of me. I had shaved my eyebrows off and my head. I'm like 120 pounds. But it's important to read. My mom used to always say, revisit the scene of the crime. It's very important to remember how bad it was so that you can appreciate how good things are right now. You know what I mean? And that's like, for me, that's the first step for, like, towards forgiving myself, is just to know like where I came from and where I'm at now. And I'm actively trying to be a better person.
Right.
I like that. Ariel, what about you?
So, I think for me, when I decided to get sober and I came back from that bachelorette trip and went to my first meeting, I already felt relief. Like it was instant for me. And I know that isn't the case for everybody, but it was like the 1,000 pounds that was on my chest was finally removed. And all I wanted to do was just focus on getting sober and going to meetings and just stacking the days like that. But I think the biggest and most important thing in my sobriety was looking my fellows in the eye and taking accountability for the actions that I did and making amends to them. My hardest amends was, to one of my best friends that, experienced my last drink. And it wasn't like an instant, I forgive you. It was like, we'll see what happens, like, let's see how much you change. And that was like acceptable to me, because today I have to have zero expectations. Like today I have to have zero, because that is the only way I stay sober, is just taking it one day at a time. But my life is beyond my wildest dreams, because I've looked everybody in the eye and made amends to them. And that is the best thing that I can do. And that's what relieves that like anxiety. Like, of course, I still think about like times that I drank and I'm like, oh my God, but like the best case scenario is I never drink again. And that's what I've done so far. And I think that keeps me like sleeping well at night, is like, I've done everything. Like I've looked people in the eye, I've made amends. I've dug deep inventories. I've looked at my past. I have like dug it up. And that way I can look people in the eye. And that was like my ultimate goal, was just to like walk through life and like not regret the past, nor shut the door on it, and just like, let's open them. Like let's do it. I'm down. Like, if you want to hang out with someone that I embarrass myself in front of, like, okay, let's do it. I don't want to have limits to my life today. And I've built my life like that. And I think that's because of the program. And I work with somebody, daily, and I put myself in vulnerable situations. And, I just moved. And like my first thought was like, I need to find a community here now. Like nobody knows me here. Like I can do whatever I want. No one knows my story. And I need to get like involved like quickly. So I think like when we talk about like the next indicated step, like that is always my next indicated step, is just to like keep doing what has worked for me.
That's what I was going to ask you too. I guess I'll ask Cassie then. Because for me, and I know for Flip too, like we have to be very careful and selective to who we are around. And it's a lot easier to identify, I feel like, a drug addict than it is an alcoholic. You know what I mean? The symptoms for me, I think, are a lot more drastic. And so I cannot associate with anybody that is actively using, but I'm assuming that it's a lot harder for somebody that's a recovering alcoholic to not be around anybody that's drinking, because it's so accepted in society. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like the norm.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. You get home from work, you have a beer, you go out. It's, on all the shows. I'm watching Suits right now. They must have drank 10 gallons of whiskey in that office. It is insane. How does that look for you? Do you have a problem? Are there people that that are still, alcoholics or still drinking casually, or however? What does that look like for you?
I think it is really glamorized, obviously. I mean, it's legal. It's a little bit different than the drugs. Like you said, you can get it pretty much anywhere, especially in Florida. In the beginning, it was hard for me to be around people that were drinking. So I knew that it was, so I removed myself. And like I said before, I basically put myself in my home prison for 3 months and worked and went to sleep and then went back to work because I didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't drink. And if I was working and coming right home and not hitting the gas station on the way home, then going to bed early, if that's what I had to do, that's what I had to do to stay sober. So that's kind of what it looked like in the beginning. I feel like my obsession with the drink was removed maybe in the first year, I want to say. So I don't have a problem if people drink. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so a lot of my siblings drink. My dad obviously doesn't drink, but friends drink. All coworkers drink pretty much. So I'm okay. I'm like totally fine being around it. The beginning was a lot harder for me though.
You were doing a lot of paying at the pump, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was difficult.
I couldn't imagine having to get gas at the dope man's house.
Oh God.
Well,
Good
actually,
Lord.
I haven't paid for gas in like 2 years because I have a company car, so I don't have to go to the gas station. I only went to get alcohol. So, and I used to go to, there's a place on Weber, like a drive-through little gas station convenience store. I would
Over
go
there
there
by
like
the old eight
every
ball.
day.
You know,
Over there by the old 8-Ball lounge.
by the old hot dog shack.
Yep,
Yeah.
right across from the hot dog shack.
Oh,
They
I
knew
know it well.
They knew the order. They saw me. They're like, "Yep, here you go." Nightly order. It's embarrassing, but that was my addiction. I was autopilot to either the gas station or, a store just so I could get alcohol. And I would actually buy like a ridiculous amount, obviously, but like 2 giant cases of whatever I was going to drink because I knew if I didn't have enough, like I didn't want to go and drive in the car. So I would get a very large amount because I knew I would need to get the second case, for that same night. So I would
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, that's
I want to say you said it. I don't know if you did, but I was watching some, but they were talking about how in early addiction, or if you're an alcoholic, right, you drink or you do drugs to kind of alleviate some of the stress. Like for me, right, it was self-esteem, self-worth. I just thought so low of myself, and the drugs helped bring me out of that, right, and gave me more confidence. And so you use these drugs or you use alcohol to be, the life of the party, or to be more confident and to do these things. And they all the stories that I've heard kind of lead to the same place, where it's you in a house by yourself,
yeah.
getting obliterated.
Now you
and
are
just
the party.
absolutely miserable,
Yeah.
Right.
And so what about for you, Ariel? What did that look like for you?
I've also been there, Cass. I used to order from the local liquor store, and this was like in the first like really bad year of my drinking. I was like in my early 20s, and the guy like knew me. I kept ordering in bottles of wine, and so finally I started telling him to gift wrap them so they looked like they'd be gifts to people. And then he'd come back to my apartment with them. I'd rip the gift wrapping off and just start pouring to myself. I'm like, it's a gift. Gifts. Can you wrap them up? And I just rip off the big bow on it and just start
Christmas.
drinking it. Like we'll go to any length. But
Yeah.
I think for me, like being around alcohol, I'm the only alcoholic in my family. I've only been around modest drinkers. I've never seen my mom finish a second glass of anything in her whole life. Same with my dad. Both my siblings are both pretty modest drinkers. So I stuck out like a sore thumb. And I was definitely the black sheep of my family. And because I was so uncomfortable in my environment, I self-sabotaged and drank to excess just to alleviate that feeling that I had on myself. So, when I got sober, I got really lucky because around my family, drinking was not like the center of it. They really and made it a point too to like just drink mocktails when I was around. And they did that as like a family within that first year for me. And I didn't say anything. And I'm like, you guys can drink, so it really wasn't a problem at home. And, my first year of sobriety, I didn't do much the first 4 months. I was at our house in Palm Springs and I just kind of barricaded myself and got sober there. And then when I got back to LA, I just kind of stayed home for the first couple months, and then I started branching out. And you know, like I said, the obsession to drink really lifted for me like right away. So today I really just walk around with my head held high, and I don't feel that like immense like social craving. You know, I date somebody that's a normie, and so there's alcohol in our home. And if it ever made me feel uncomfortable at any time, like it would be removed. But I can walk around our home and like I don't think about it at all. So, and you know,
So
I know that people don't experience that and wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I have friends in the program that are like, oh, I could never date somebody that's not sober, or like have it in the house. But for me, it doesn't bother me. But I want to be able to be social. Like I loved, you know, being social while I was drinking, and I want to sustain that being sober. Of course, I'm not going out as often as I was before. It was like every weekend and Tuesdays and Thursdays. But you know, I have a plan when I socialize. You know, I go out. If I want to leave, you know, before midnight, I can. Like midnight is the latest I stay out when I'm doing something social with my partner, like, you know, my friends. That's just like my limit. And I always drive. So if you want to come back with me, fine. If you want to lift there, fine. But I'm leaving when I want to leave. So I just have, you know, I have tools, and I implement them in my life daily. Like I just like make sure that like I have a defense against the drink. And you know, if I want to leave, I leave. I drive myself there. I just have a plan. I have a plan when I go into things, because though I don't have the obsession to drink anymore now, I know tomorrow it could be different. So I want to like build that armor. But yeah, I think everyone's experience is totally different. Like I want to be able to socialize and do things differently, but you know, it's to each his own, and whatever makes you feel comfortable. I think if your intentions are good, like if your intentions are like, you know, maybe I might drink, so like let's just see. Then
Yeah.
like I know I'm doing the wrong thing, but like if I can walk and know that like my intentions are clean, then like I'm good.
Yeah, that's really dope. That's the only thing that we're promised in our programs is to, you know, to lose the desire to use, you know, drugs and
Right.
alcohol. That's so crazy when you say like, you know, that your people were modest drinkers. You know what I mean?
What's
Because
that?
like I've never said like, yeah, you know, my brother was a modest crackhead. You know what I mean? He just smoked a little crack here and there. Like, you know what I mean? That's got to be so tough to identify, you know, that you have an issue. I'm still wrapping my head around that. Here's a really important question. Ariel, how was it the first time you watched The Little Mermaid? How was that for you? Let's
You know
walk
what?
us through that
My
process.
go-to thing at a bar when I was drinking and I'd introduce myself to somebody and they could never hear me because A, I was probably slurring, and B, it's like loud as fuck. But I would just say, my name's Ariel, like the mermaid, like
Yeah.
really loud.
Of
So it
course.
resonates. But I was born 1 year before the movie. So
That
Wow.
is
There it is.
the original,
Yep.
the OG.
Is it for you guys, right? Because I mean, yes, we are very, very similar, right? However, I feel like you touched on, if somebody is strung out on the drugs that we used to do, it's pretty obvious. Like I could spot it from a mile away.
right.
And I remember, I'll see it from time to time. I'll see somebody, because we took meetings into the rehab that I went to. And we would see somebody get out of there, and then, you know, 6 months later, wouldn't hear from them, and I'd see him at the gas station, and I already knew what time it was, right? And it was never me judging them. What I always thought was, oh my God, that's how I used to look. That's how I
Mhm.
used to act. And it's so, I hate to use the word, but it's so gross, right? To think that that's how I used to walk around and portray myself, and really thought that I was actually like
Oh, you couldn't tell me
fooling
nothing.
everybody. Like nobody knew.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knew that I was
Yeah.
wearing long sleeves in
Yeah.
the middle of summer for,
Yeah.
you know, shits and gigs.
Yeah.
Like, so is it like that for you? Like you said you go out, right? Is it like that for you when you see somebody that is obnoxiously drunk? Like, oh my God, like I
Yeah.
relate.
That's so tough. So yeah, I mean, I always pick, you know, today I have empathy. And that is something that I did not have before I got sober. Like I didn't get sober just to stop drinking. I got sober to change everything that was going on in my life because that allowed me to sustain the behavior of me drinking alcoholically. So today I have empathy. If someone's embarrassing themselves, I'm like, that sucks. Like that's super, super embarrassing. And like, I definitely looked like that. And like, I wondered why things weren't going so great. Like, so yeah, I have empathy. It's super fucking embarrassing. I was just in Scottsdale on a bachelorette sober, and there was a girl just passed out in the middle of the street at 7 o'clock. I'm like, oh, not good. I think today it's just like, I get to see it and go, thank God that's not me. It's like when you go to a meeting and there's a newcomer there and it's like, they are reminding me that like, it's still not working out there. So I do take it as a reminder, but too, like, I also like, I really wonder, like, I'm sure people looked at me when I was drinking and never thought that I had a drinking problem. So I do always like wonder, like, is this just a one-off or is this like how they are? Do they drink like this every time? Like how I did. So I don't know. I always like wonder if it's like how they always drink or if it's just a one-off. But of course I have empathy. I have empathy because it's so embarrassing. And I just hope that like this is just a one-time thing.
What about you, Cass?
I don't go out too often. But I don't know. It is embarrassing, like you say, like looking at people that are acting in that type of way, and you're like, that's exactly how I looked every time I was out. But I thought I was totally fine and like I had no issue. It's just crazy to think when you do see it when you are sober that that's what you were doing, and I was probably doing it 10 times worse than them. It's really embarrassing to think about. That's really all I can say about it is I just think like that's what I was, but I was probably a lot worse. So I'm glad that I'm sober now. Glad it's not me.
Now, Ariel, let me ask you, I heard you say LA. Is LA the first place you got clean?
Yeah.
What's the recovery scene in LA like? That's gotta be wild.
Yeah.
I mean, so I did the bulk of my alcoholic drinking in New York.
Okay.
So when I graduated from college, I moved home for a couple months, which is Los Angeles. Then I went to New York and it had already started brewing. Like I was drinking alcoholically. I knew something was different. Like, cause I remember like, the majority of my college years, like I did not have the obsession to drink. I drank, I obviously overdid it. Like I was in a sorority and, college, whatever. But my thinking, it wasn't like the allergic thinking. Like it wasn't like once I had a sip, the obsession was on. But when I started to New York, that was definitely like already in the making. So when I moved home and got sober, a couple months later, I kind of immersed myself like in the West Side, Santa Monica meetings just for a little bit. And then to the South Bay where I'm from. So I know the sober community really, really well in the South Bay. It's a lot of really beautiful, successful housewives that drank too much. And so it was hard to find a lot of people my age that, had the same kind of like drinking history that I did, but I was able to find it. And I think it's so important when you do find a sober community to like find people that have what you want. And when they share, you can relate to. And I think that's why like this kind of debate of like, NA or AA or whatever program that you're a part of, like, why is it so different? And I do think like you just naturally gravitate towards like the people whose stories sound similar to yours, but like, it's so quick to like, people are so quick to forget that like the alcoholic thinking or like the addictive thinking runs the same. Like I have it in me just as much as anybody else, but the AA out here is awesome. I just moved to Long Beach, the Belmont Shore area. So I'm like kind of immersing myself in it and it's like really cool. So I'm excited to like figure out how it's like out here.
Nice.
That's exciting.
So I know like for me, the getting clean for me, like some of the fears I had getting clean were like dealing with withdrawal, like Flip said, not being able to be in a social environment and like have people accept me. So I just wanted to ask you, Cassie, like what were some of your fears maybe when you were in when you were actively drinking? What were some of your fears for getting sober?
So I guess they're kind of irrational because you're not really thinking straight. But of course I thought no one would ever want to date me again if I can't drink alcohol. What am I going to do? Or what if I get married? I can't have I would say a glass of champagne, but obviously it would be more like a bottle or two. Nothing's ever one glass for me. It was like bottle, 2 bottles,
Heard
you
that.
get it. But just things like that, how can I still be friends with my friends? What am I ever going to do again to have fun? I literally can never have fun again in my life. These were all like real fears that I had, and it was really depressing. Obviously I have a lot of fun in sobriety. I did just actually get engaged a couple weeks ago. So someone wanted to date me and I'm sober.
Wow.
So that's good news for me. But they were irrational fears. So I'm happy to know that they're not real. And you're just not thinking clearly in the beginning. So about anything.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't.
I don't think anybody is
No.
in the beginning.
No.
At all.
That fog hasn't lifted yet. I know for me, right? And I mean, listen, my drug of choice was anything you put in front of me. And like when I say I have a weak stomach, like I don't ride roller coasters, like I don't, and which makes for a terrible drug addict. I spend a lot of time hugging the toilet, right? And alcohol was never my go-to, but if it was there, I was drinking. And anything to just numb the feelings that I was feeling. And I know when I first got clean, one of my reservations was if I ever get married, which would have been a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
How am I not going to have a glass of champagne? Right. And that was a huge thing for me. And luckily, I found somebody who I married and who wanted to marry me. And at my wedding, it was one of the coolest experiences looking at my groomsmen, because my stepdad was a groomsman, and then it was all people in recovery, and looking at my wife, and it was her sisters and all people in recovery, and looking out across the crowd, and it was just a bunch of people in recovery. And the only thing that I had was actually one of these on my table, and there was no desire for the champagne like I thought it was, because it's such an irrational thing, how am I ever going to find people to hang out with? How am I ever going to have fun? How am I ever going to date someone? How am I ever going to work? How am I supposed to work and deal with life sober? Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
And,
oh my God.
But the coolest thing on this side of things, right? And it's important. And I remind people all the time, like, I am by no means cured. I am still a work in progress. And this, journey is never going to stop. Like, it is something I am going to do until I'm no longer here. But I think it's important to understand that I have fun. I have amazing people in my life that would do anything for me. Luke brought his kids over yesterday, and we just had 4 kids run around the house, and he went and got entirely too much breakfast food, and we just had the kids there. And that was the only thing we got wasted on, was pancakes and biscuit and gravy, and then laid on the couch and watched Spider-Man.
Spent $100 on breakfast. And
Oh,
the kids
man.
barely ate anything.
We sure did.
That was dark.
Yeah.
That was a dark time.
But, it's things like that I get to do today. Saturday, we had my son's 8th birthday party in the scorching earth that is Florida right now. I don't know how the heat is out there in California. Here, it is so hot, it makes you sad.
Yeah.
Like, you step outside and you're just instantly sad.
So depressing.
and
wet from sweat.
Oh my. Listen, I was setting up the party at 10:30 a.m. The party didn't start till 2. I looked at my wife. I said, never again.
Yeah.
My son's never having an outdoor birthday ever again.
Yeah.
Like, this is just ridiculous. But it's the things that I get to do,
Right.
I get to have all of these people over to my house, and nobody is making an ass out of themselves. And I'm not going into everybody's purses when they're not looking.
Oh, yeah.
Stealing money. Well, yeah.
I'm making an ass of myself, but I'm doing it clean.
Yeah. And so,
right.
these are just the gifts of recovery that we get to experience today.
Yeah.
And we get to remember it, and we get to go through the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, some of my greatest accomplishments in recovery are getting through difficult shit clean,
Mhm.
you know, and showing up for loved ones or friends when they're going through difficult shit. And it's those things that to me matter the most. You know, my stepdad is like a father to me, and he was dealing with some health issues a while back and was in and out of the hospital. And just being able to, hey, I'm going to be there at 5, and actually be there at 5 to come visit him. Hey, you need anything? Do you need me to bring you clothes? It's stuff like that that are the gifts of recovery. Yes, the monetary shit is cool. I like that I have a house and that I have a nice vehicle and I have things, but it's being a man of my word that means the most to me, I think.
Yeah.
And so,
How many treatment centers have you guys been into? Because I feel like I get a lot like from women, because I've been to 2, and I get a lot from like women in the program, like, did like rehab help you? And like that was like a really thoughtful question. I'm like, God, like I don't know. Like some of them did, like one of them didn't really. So kind of like how has that experience like brought you closer to the program, or like did that help? Would you suggest that for somebody else?
My answer will be a lot quicker than yours.
yeah, so go ahead.
Zero treatment facilities
How
for
many
me.
times you been to prison?
A couple, 2 prison stints, a bunch of jail time sprinkled in the mix. They sprinkled the infield with a bunch of 6 months here and there, but I never got blessed with the opportunity to do treatment, which I think would have been really beneficial to me in my recovery, and possibly would have like jump started my recovery a lot sooner, and I probably wouldn't have had to deal with a 38-month prison sentence. But everything worked out in the end. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be for it. So
for me, I went to detox a half dozen times.
Right.
And as a matter, so I went to this rehab we have here where actually, Cass, I met your dad for the first time, and was instantly just drawn to him because he was actually the first person that, even though I wasn't ready to get clean, he was the first person to kind of give me hope.
OG.
Yep. To show me that, like, oh, okay. Because I always pictured recovery as this politically correct thing. Like you have to sit up and you can't swear. And I don't know why I always envisioned it like that, but that's just how I thought it was. And here comes this, dude from Boston who uses the F word as a noun, verb, adjective, pronoun. I mean, he just speaks so freely with it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And he was the first person that gave me hope. With that being said, I just wasn't ready. And I was court ordered to that treatment center. And I broke every rule that I could because I had a problem with authority. And, everything they said, don't get into a relationship early in recovery. Of course, I met a girl in rehab. Great idea. And needless to say, 2 months later, I'm living out of a rundown motel with open warrants.
Yeah.
And, went to jail, got out, and gave recovery a shot. I went to a halfway house and I was clean for 3 years, but I was just kind of going through the motions. I wasn't working a program.
Right.
And this last time when I hit that emotional bottom where I was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually bankrupt, and I went to rehab, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's a loaded question, right? Because does rehab work? If you want it to, it does.
Yeah.
Right. I have a friend of the family whose son just couldn't get it right. And she's like, I think he needs like a 2-year program. And I said, I was in rehab for 3 months and I've been clean 7 years. It has no bearing on the length of the rehab. It's, are they really willing to give this life a chance, And so when I went to rehab, that was in a mental and an emotional boot camp for me. I was trying everything that I possibly could. I was speaking to therapists. I was, you know, doing a lot of journaling. I was doing a lot of reading. I was doing a lot of self-work. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's given me a life that I didn't even think was possible. And so,
Yes.
you know, to answer your very short question long like I normally do, yes, it does, if you want
Yeah.
it to.
I was
Yeah,
just thinking you were doing a lot of journaling and I was doing a lot of fighting for my life. They were just trying to survive, sharpening knives and shit.
Well, like my parents sent me to treatment when I was 18,
Mm.
and I had a really short stint with like some issues at a young age, and they sent me for a year to a program in Arizona, like on a truck down a road, like bye-bye. And
At 18.
yeah. And, it was obviously super difficult because I could not fathom that my parents would drop me off and drive away and leave me there.
Like,
I
what
was
is
like,
wrong with these people?
well, I was like, why you're just trying, like, I did not understand. But like today, I so have the skills to be like, my parents gave me an opportunity, and I left that program after a year. I could not believe, I thought it would be like 1 month, 3 months max, but I stayed the whole 12 months. And my life changed because of that. But with the resentment that I had from that experience lasted me years, like years and years. I held that over me like a dark cloud, and it stopped me from opportunities. I'd get drunk and call my parents. I can't believe you did that to me. You abandoned me. Like, it's totally screwed me up. But now that I'm sober, I got sober at 30. Like, I can change my perspective on things. Like, the program has given me a tool set to change my perspective on situations that have happened in my past that used to baffle me. Like that example, like today I can be grateful that my parents gave me an opportunity to get sober. And while I wasn't ready yet at 18, when I started problem drinking, towards 30, I knew exactly where to go. When someone said AA, I'm like, oh, I've done that before. I did that for a year. I can do that. Like, that was fun. I enjoyed it. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't like unpalatable. Like, I could fathom doing it, but then, I went back when I was like in college to a week-long thing, and it like really didn't do anything for me. But, a week, I don't know. And I think I just needed to like dry out for a little bit. But I really do think like you can get like so much. I mean, that like changed the trajectory of my life at 18, for sure.
Planted that seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's when I did my first prison bid.
I was in
I
jail
was
at
at
18.
18.
Yeah. All right. So
Sales charge.
I think we're going to end, but I have a question that all of us are going to answer.
Oh, wow.
And you're going to go last.
Group.
So everybody can take your answers. So if you guys are ready, what is one piece of advice you would offer someone who is dealing with a similar addiction?
Okay. So I gave my sponsee this advice today because she's having a problem being bored with the program. And I said, first, contrary action. If you don't want to do something, that probably means you should do it. And second, pick up the phone to somebody that has had the problem that you've had. Because if they've been able to get through it, I personally want to know how that person did it. Because I believe that if that person can do it, I can do it too. So find somebody, dig through your phone, ask people, call people, and figure it out, and ask somebody with some time, how did you overcome this? And that's kind of like my first step, I think.
Something, and I'm really not trying to talk about your dad this whole podcast cast, but it just keeps coming up. Something
He's gonna love this.
Yeah, I know he is. Something that he taught me is, because I thought it was, you have a sponsor, right? And that's your person. But he said, listen, I have a support group. I have somebody that when I feel like fighting, I call. I have somebody when I am struggling with females that I call. I have somebody that when I'm struggling with parenting, I call. And so he built that support group and it planted that seed with me. And now I have that a very similar support group. I have somebody that I can talk to when I want to pick up one of my kids and hit the other kid with them, right? And I have, when I feel like using, and when I went through my daughter being in the NICU, like I built up that support group of people to call in certain situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cause like personally, I haven't gotten sick of the program. So like, I don't know. Call Karen. She'll know. She's been sober for 35 years. She's probably been bored.
Yeah.
Call her.
That's great. That's great. Cass, what about you? One piece of advice.
I would say remember your why. So think about why you're doing it. Keep that front of mind. Obviously, reach out for help. Just ask for help and just keep going. Because like you said, Flip, in the beginning, like sometimes, life just comes at you and you just have to navigate that and figure out ways and tools to be able to effectively navigate difficult situations sober. So just keep pushing through. There'll be better days ahead.
I'll let you go. I'll let you go if you want.
Oh, go ahead. I thought you already went.
No, I haven't gone.
Oh. Go ahead.
So it's hard to give one piece of advice, right? I think the most helpful piece of advice that I was given in going through this journey was don't listen to the messenger, listen to the message. Because so many times, for instance, right, we're here in Florida. I don't know if you know this, Ariel, but there are 9 billion old people. And in a lot of meetings for alcoholics, it's a room full of 80-year-old men who they got clean during the Great Depression. And I always made it up in my mind, like, I can't relate to you.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not the same.
Prohibition
And
era.
somebody, my first sponsor said, don't listen to the messenger, listen to the message. And when I started doing that, my perspective changed. And I started picking up different nuggets from people. And yes, I don't know what it's like to have to bootleg liquor from the cops because prohibition was going on. But I can learn something from that unmanageability that you're willing to break the law to get that substance in your system. And so I think that for me in early recovery, that was a huge aha moment for me. Let's go, Luke. What you got?
Oh, it's on me.
It's on you.
Oh, I would say to somebody who's dealing with a similar addiction or problem, I would say to attack your recovery the way that you attacked your addiction or your disease, and don't get discouraged when things aren't going according to plan, because as we all know, it's a marathon. So you sail that ship to that shore and you burn them ships, and that's it. No retreat, no surrender.
Love that.
And that's that. Burn the ships.
Yep.
That's my advice. Cut everything else, burn the ships.
Listen, thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. It's been insightful.
Yeah.
This is a little more of a serious tone than we're used to. Normally Luke's talking about wieners and stuff like that. So
well, I wanted to keep it,
professional,
respectful and stuff. I didn't want to.
But we appreciate you guys taking the time to share with us. But we are going to link the Surprisingly Sober podcast and Instagram. Are you guys just on Instagram? Are you guys on Facebook too? Just Instagram?
Just Insta.
Okay, perfect. We're going to link all of that. So make sure you go and follow them. If you have today, give yourself
and your higher power a boop on the nose. Boop. Come on, guys.
You guys got to do it.
Boop.
You guys got to do it.
Boop yourself.
Boop. Boop.
Bingo.
There it is. We love you guys. But I'm just going to need you guys to slide slowly.
Just off camera.
Yep, just off camera.
Oh no.
If you can't just cover it with the mic. There it is. There it is. There it is.
I'm stuck to my chair.